and I'm a member of both the American Association of University Women and the League of Women Voters. And working together, these two organizations have held a legislative forum for the past many years. This has been an historic week and an extraordinary year. So we're hoping that by having our forum this morning, that we present a sense of normalcy. So I welcome you all, members and guests, to our very first Zoom legislative forum. Having the forum on Zoom today has allowed us to go much further geographically than we were able to in the past. We are excited to have Representative Lowry Snow from the St. George area. You want to wave? And Milner from the Ogden area. And we have Senators Jani, Iwamoto, and Derek Kitchen representing the Salt Lake area. Normally, we would have 2 senators and 2 representatives, but the House Democrats are caucusing today, so we have 3 senators and 1 representative. I also want to introduce the committee members who planned this forum. Janine Kuhn-Coker, Donnie Davis, Cheryl Smith, and Claire Turners, and Marilyn Shearer created our flyer. Our moderator this morning is Kathy Fitzgerald, and she is a 50-year member of the League of Women Voters and a retired English professor. Her husband, Gene, will be our timer. And lastly, Peggy Carrico engineered the technology behind this meeting. So it's a big thank you to all for ensuring that our forum would continue this year. We'd ask our members to send out questions or send in questions prior to today's forum. So if a question arises, use the Q&A function key at the bottom of your screen and you type in your question. Then Janine will collect those questions and she'll present them to the legislators if time permits. Now, I turn this over to Kathy to explain a little of the procedures so that we get a preview of what might occur at the legislature this year. Kathy.
Okay, thank you very much, Terry. Welcome to everyone, panelists and audience alike. We appreciate your devoting your Saturday morning to this important discussion of what's upcoming in our legislature. I'd like to talk about the procedures briefly before we get started. I'll begin by asking each legislator to introduce yourself. Please tell us about your a little about yourself and about your priorities for this legislative session. What issues are most important to you for this session? Following your introductions, we will move to questions our members, as Terry said, our members have submitted prior to this meeting, and then around 11 o'clock, we'll move to questions submitted during the meeting to the Q&A screen function. Legislators, each of you will have 3 minutes to introduce yourselves at the beginning, and then 2 minutes to answer each question. And as Terry said, my husband Gene is our timekeeper. He will hold up a 1 minute left sign, a 30-second sign, and a time's up sign. So be sure to have him on your screen. Our meeting will end at 11:30, so you have that time frame in mind. We'll go in a specific order for the questions. We'll begin with Representative Snow. We're going by seniority, I decided. So Representative Snow will be our first speaker to introduce yourself. And then Senator Iwamoto and Milner, who share their seniority, elected the same year, and then Senator Kitchen, who is our most recently elected legislator. We'll follow this order for every question, but move down the list for the first person to answer the question. So does that make sense? We'll be in the same order, but a different person being the first to answer each question. Okay, if that makes sense, let's get started. Representative Snow, would you please start us with your introduction?
Thank you, Kathy. And should listen closer. How much time for the introduction?
3 minutes for the introduction and then 2 minutes for
All
each
right.
question following.
All right. It's my wife usually says you didn't listen to me anyway. So I apologize for that, having to have you repeat that.
No problem.
My home is actually in Santa Clara, a suburb, you might say, of St. George. Today, I'm broadcasting from our little cabin up on Cedar Mountain. And so I've got kind of a makeshift place here in our master bedroom. This is a place we really enjoy coming year round. And so it's nice to be able to join you from here. I've lived in the St. George, Washington County area for 41 years, going on 42. My wife is an educator, actually recently retired. We've raised 6 children here. It's a beautiful place and a wonderful place to live. I came into the legislature in 2012. I currently chair the House Education Standing Committee. I'm on the Judiciary Committee, and probably rightly so because of my legal background. I've been an attorney likewise for about 40 years. Love serving in the legislature, and when people ask me what I like most, it's the people that I get to serve with. People like this on the panel today, high quality individuals, and we get to affect policy in a relatively short period of time. And I want to say policy that makes a difference for good in our state. So thank you for the invitation, allowing me to be with you today, and look forward to answering some questions.
Okay, thank you, Representative Snow. Senator Iwamoto.
Thank you. I just want to say, when you said seniority, I thought, how do they know our age? So anyway, okay.
That kind of seniority.
Anyway, I'm Jani Iwamoto.
Senator, you didn't need to start with that comment.
Okay. And I started in District 4, which is Holiday, Murray, Salt Lake City, and most of Mill Creek. And before that, in 2008, I was elected to the Salt Lake County Council, and that district was bigger, but the Senate seat sit right in the middle. So I'm very fortunate to have the constituency I have. And I just want to thank you for having me. I live in Holiday now. And I just want to say something about AAUW and League of Women Voters, because I've been a proud member for many years. And I love what you stand for. And many of you, I could list, I was trying to think of people to say, Jeanette, Clara, Peggy, all these people that Marilyn, that I know who have been mentors to me. And you stand for equity, research and education and advocacy, nonpartisan advocacy, I might add. And my daughter especially was in the program, the awesome program at Westminster with AAUW. And so I love how you mentor girls. So, and I was proud to do our concurrent resolution that turned into a citation for your the 100th year anniversary of AAUW last year. And I want to say too, I love who I work with. I love this panel because yes, Anne and I came in at this time together and have so much respect for her. Lowry Snow, we've worked on a number of things together, and I get to point to him now because he hasn't returned my call yet for one. No, but anyway, I have worked with him on things, and Derek Kitchen, who was my seatmate, and he's made it fun, and just, he's very bright, and I've loved working with every one of them. So I want to thank that, and for having such a great people to be on the panel with. I am continuing to serve as assistant minority whip, and have a lot of committees. I have, well, besides executive appropriations, ledge management, ethics and rules, I have natural resource appropriation subcommittee, and I just was put on infrastructure. And then I have 3 standing committees: government ops, health and human services, and natural resources. And so I can get into, I don't know what my time is. You had asked about bills that we're doing and things, and I guess we can discuss that as time goes on, because am I at my end, the timing? But I have a lot of bills that I'm trying to streamline this year, because it's been a different year. And of course we have so much to deal with, the pandemic, and just, you know, police reform things. So I have a couple of police reform bills that I've been working on in conjunction with campus safety, that 2 companion bills when an officer leaves or retires and goes to another place. And so we want to make sure it's covering the loop, getting the loopholes, closing those, and making sure that the police are accountable and transparent. And they have supported this really. I'm really happy, because Chief Ross said to me, who's now head of CCJJ, he said, we can take people's property, we can take their lives. So we need to be accountable and transparent. It doesn't happen often, because there's really good law enforcement, but when it does, we want to make sure that the bad cops are kept in line and accounted for. So I really have learned so much from them. We do a lot of legislation, but I tell you, I learned so much from every bill I do and the stakeholders that you meet. And then I have, of course, some campus safety bills, and that the students actually have really come to bat. And so that will deal with a statewide commission that they want to set up, and also other buildings and structures that are off campus that may or may not be part of the Clery Act. We want to have reporting on what crimes, and have it disaggregated information, so that students and parents, and they will know coming in where to live, and know that where they can be safe. And that's just one step in the process. And then I have just a bunch of others for polls, is that at the end?
Is
I
that
don't
the
know.
3 minutes, Jean?
Okay, thank you. I will listen to the others, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Senator Iwamoto. Senator Milner.
Thank you so much for having me today. I enjoy the opportunity to participate. I had the opportunity several years ago to participate in person, and so respect both organizations and the work you do, and you're engaging the citizens of this state in our processes. It's so important. Our republic works if we have strong citizen engagement, and you are really part of helping make that happen. So thank you very much for that. I'm Ann Milner. I represent Senate District 18. That includes parts of Weber, Davis, and Morgan counties. And which just really gives me a unique perspective in that, and sometimes I describe this in relationship to the school districts that I overlap with. Morgan is much more like a rural school district. Ogden School District is probably the second most diverse school district in the state. And Davis is the second largest school district in the state. And I have one school district, Weber School District, that's kind of typical, which means I have a really diverse constituency group. I have a diverse set of needs, really spanning from rural to urban kinds of issues. And I love that opportunity to represent that broad spectrum of viewpoints and issues and concerns, and try to bring people together to solve problems. I serve on, I was recently elected as the majority whip, for which I feel very grateful that my colleagues selected me. to be able to serve our caucus. It's really a great honor. In addition to that, I serve on public education appropriation and higher education appropriation, as well as on the Education Policy Committee, Economic Development and Workforce Services, and a new committee for me this year, Transportation. It's always nice to begin to serve on a different committee than you served on and really start to learn in depth about the issues of those committees, and I appreciate that opportunity. Much of the legislation that I run really centers around education, economic development, and some healthcare related legislation. But it's an opportunity, I believe, to help make a difference in those areas. And I appreciate that opportunity to serve. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator Milner. Senator Kitchen.
Thank you so much, Kathy, and good morning to everybody who's on the panel and all those 82 folks who've tuned in as a participant. This is excellent turnout for a Saturday morning. Good morning to everybody. My name is Derek Kitchen, and I have the honor of representing the constituents of Senate District 2 in the legislature. I was elected in 2018, so I am entering my third general session on the 19th of January is when we start. And I'm very much looking forward to getting back into the swing of things with our general session coming up. The last year has been a busy year for us in the legislature. We've had to adapt, like many of you, when it comes to how we conduct our work. A lot of meetings online, digitally, of course, a lot of phone calls. So I'm eager to get back to to Capitol Hill and to have some semblance of a normal legislative session with our meetings. Of course, with all the necessary precautions as much as we possibly can to be mindful of the public health crisis at hand. But I am feeling optimistic going into the general session. As Senator Iwamoto said, we've had a great time working together. In the Senate Democratic Caucus, there's only 6 of us, so we are a small, but we try to think of ourselves as a mighty team. And so, I'm really excited to, of course, run some of my own policy this year, but of course, to support my colleagues as well, because I know that there's a lot of folks, both on the Republican and the Democratic side, that are putting together some really impactful policy proposals for this session. And so I'm excited for what we have to contemplate. Senate District 2, just by way of orientation, is downtown, Central City, Avenues, Capitol Hill. I have all of the University of Utah and a good chunk of Sugar House as well. So it's a large district. It's definitely an important district, being the urban core of our state of Utah, and a very diverse district as well. As far as my committee assignments this year, I have many of the same committee assignments from the last 2 years, including economic development and workforce services, where I serve along with Senator Milner. And then judiciary and law enforcement is another one that I'm excited to continue to serve on. A new committee for me this year is the Education Policy Committee that Senator Milner also mentioned. So she and I, we're going to be buddies the next 2 years, considering we have twin assignments there. And then, of course, on the appropriation side, I get to continue my service on the executive offices in criminal justice, and I get to cut my teeth on the business, economic development, and labor appropriations committee. So I'm really excited about the assignments that I have this year. And of course, some of the policy that I'm working on. One thing that I'd like to mention by way of policy that I'll be attaching my name to is the National Popular Vote Compact. And I bring that up primarily because I know that the League has a real interest in seeing this policy achieved here in the state of Utah. And so I do have a good list of folks who are involved with the League that are interested. So I will be keeping many of you informed as this policy makes its way through the process. But if anybody doesn't think that they're on the list, just feel free to send me a direct message and we can talk about that a little bit more directly. But I want to thank you so much for taking the time today to engage, and to you and the moderators here for pulling us together. And I look forward to the dialogue.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator Kitchen, and so do we. And let's get on to it. Our first question is about redistricting. And it will go to Senator Iwamoto first, 2 minutes per answer. What criteria will you be looking for in appointing members to the Redistricting Commission? Once the maps are sent to the Government Operations Committee, how can the public be certain that their operations, the Operations Committee's operations, will be open and transparent? Senator Iwamoto.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So I just wanted to say in background, I did support, the, what we voted on, the voters voted on. And when I was in the Salt Lake County Council, when I won election, it was the first time that we became a Democrat led county council, which was for a couple of years while I was there. And we did, number one thing we did was an independent redistricting commission. So I had tried that in the legislature, but it wasn't, I'm glad that we had it in public because now it's there. One of the criteria, I know that I'm not exactly sure on specifics what they're doing, but I know that they pick from both parties, and then I think there should be a nonpartisan person in there too, and that's what we did. I know they're looking for people on the Democrat side, which they are on the Republican side, and names are coming in, which the minority leaders will get one each to put forward. And I'm sorry, someone else might know exactly the criteria there is. What is important, I think, is that when these maps and the commission comes back, is that I found when we had our commission, we had, I think it was 3 Republicans, 3 Democrat, and 1 independent, but they all worked together and it was unanimous. And I loved it because they all worked together so well, and they knew that their job was important to do a fair job. And they gave us 3 fair maps. And it was important, I think, for our legislative body then that we made as little changes as possible. Our caucus was saying, this is the people, what they have spoken. So I am on government ops, and I think that holding to these maps, if they're done fairly, and I think with citizens involved doing this, I know one thing is they can't be in political office the past 2 years, and that we pick really good people that work just for the people of Utah, making them fair maps, not gerrymandering, because people look at that, and that when we get these maps that we get to choose from, I hope that we don't make changes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Senator Iwamoto. Senator Milner, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think you're really wanting to know about the commission. Is this the independent commission that you really are looking for information about? That's my assumption. Just want to check.
Yes.
Okay. So yes, the independent commission, as you all know, will be formed, and it will participate in having public hearings around the state. And they have been asked to submit maps. That will be then, but the other opportunity that we have in the state of Utah, which I think is really important, is that this process will allow anyone to go on to the website and to be able to draw maps, which I think it engages anybody that really wants to participate in this process, the opportunity to draw maps and to submit those maps online. And the Independent Commission and others will have access to that feedback and input from everybody across the state. And then from that point, the Independent Commission will prepare and recommend 3 different maps, which for each of the types. So there'll be one for thinking about congressional candidates, and one for Senate districts, one for House districts, and then also we've got school board member districts. So for each of those, we will have to draw the maps for those, but everyone gets to participate. The commission will then be asked to submit 3 different possibilities for all those options. And then that will come back to the legislative committee that's appointed to review that and to make a recommendation to the legislative body. So I think it's going to be a great process for us in the state. I would suggest that the timing is also going to be interesting. Census data is supposed to be available on April the 1st. I think we've had some indications that potentially there could be some delays in that. I hope not. I hope they're able to meet those deadlines, because the other part of this is the public process for being able to get around the state and allow our constituents to provide feedback to the independent commission and others from all across the state. And I really want to make sure we have plenty of time to do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Milner. Senator Kitchen.
Thank you for the question. I think it's important to note that, this, once a decade process is probably the most important matter at hand this legislative session. And Senator Milner, I believe, brought up some important dates that are coming up. And I think that those are the key issues that I'm going to be watching as the session gets going. The commissioners themselves ought to be appointed by the 1st of February. So that's coming up in a few weeks. And as Senator Milner as well mentioned, I think that there will be some delays in the census data. I understand that there's been some deadlines federally that have been missed that will push back the data coming to states on the assumed timeline. So that'll be an interesting process as well, just to see how we receive federal information, census data, and what that does to our timeline, because the Better Boundaries Initiative does have some concrete dates that we need to be mindful of. One thing worth noting as well is the need to do seven community meetings statewide by the 1st of August of this year. And so, the process itself is going to, I think, be a really healthy engagement process for the state of Utah and residents. My hope is that we do see folks turn out for these public meetings and continue to stay engaged throughout. I think there was part of the question, like, how can we guarantee the public will be confident, something to that effect?
Of the transparency of the process.
The process that's been mapped out in the Better Boundaries Initiative that was passed by the voters of this state, I believe is a relatively fair and an open process, and I stand by that. With the Utah legislature, there's no guarantees though, and I think that we just need to be mindful of that. And as advocates of transparency and good government, me as an individual, as a senator representing my constituents, I'm going into this process with my eyes wide open. And we just got to keep our eyes on this and make sure that we're holding everybody accountable, because there actually, in my understanding, aren't guarantees here.
Okay, thank you very much. And Representative Snow.
Thank you for the question. I agree with Representative Kitchen that this may be one of the most important legislative matters that we undertake this session because it affects every sector and every citizen in our state, not just presently, but the future going forward. I'm a big fan of process. And I think if you look back, areas where we've stumbled in our legislative duties have oftentimes been related to not paying our dues for process. That's my opinion. Part of that comes from some of the training I received when I was on the Judicial Performance Evaluation Commission about this concept of procedural justice. And that concept, in summary, means people are much more willing, citizens are much more willing to live with decisions that are made by those who have authority over those decisions if they believe that they've had a fair amount of process in that decision, that is input. That's where we get the term due process from in our constitutions. And so the reason I start with that is I'm really proud of the levels of public engagement and afforded. And I'm with those who have said that I hope the public becomes engaged. Technology, one of the great blessings of technology is that we now have the ability to go online on the commission's website when this gets underway and actually submit our own maps. And when you think about having that level of engagement down to every citizen that wants to participate in this process, it's pretty significant and frankly pretty amazing. Not only will they have that kind of access at that level, but as the process moves on up through committee hearings, through full legislative hearings, the right to contact their legislator and weigh in, the right to contact committee members and actually participate in that process is significant and shouldn't be lost. Ultimately, we tend to focus on the final decision, but I think we should never forget how important that the process is as well. So I look forward to it, and I'm out of time probably, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Snow. The second question will have to do with the homeless, and Senator Milner will be the first person to address this question. The question is, the homeless population in Utah continues to exceed the capacity to provide shelter. What are your plans to expand housing and services to meet the needs of the homeless? Senator Milner.
So what I think is really important is thinking about this from a holistic standpoint. And one of the things that happens is we have different communities dealing with homelessness. And the interesting part of what we've learned, I think, is this one community puts some things in place that has an impact for other communities in the state. And what they do may either increase or decrease, but this is definitely a statewide issue. And as a result of that, there's been discussion about how do we organize around homelessness to try to deal with this from a statewide perspective. And the Kim C. Gardner Institute convened a group over this last year to really think through how do we get better organized so that we're more able, first of all, to develop our strategies around homelessness and to build statewide plans that really engage the local communities in this effort. But they engage them in a way that we're coordinating those services and making sure we're making them available in the right places at the right times and in the right ways. So you're going to see legislation that I think will have pretty broad support for restructuring our top level governance, bringing somebody in that would report to Governor Cox, that would really facilitate and coordinate this work, bringing all the stakeholders to the table, helping us develop statewide strategies through a Utah Homeless Council, and also creating a philanthropic consortium and allowing us to build strategies and coordinated models that will work across the state. And I think we really do have to fix how we work together so that we then can get to root cause analysis and begin to address the substantive issues. So I think this is really important legislation that will be run in this session.
Thank you very much, Senator Milner. Senator Kitchen.
Thank you so much. Senator Milner brought up a number of really important points, and I won't overemphasize too many of them, but I think it's really important for us to acknowledge that this truly is a statewide issue. And even beyond that, this is a national issue. You know, if you look at any of our communities along, you know, here in the West, you're seeing homelessness explode all over. It's been sort of the story over the last decade, and I'm expecting that this is going to continue to be the trend. And so that's why it's so important for us to really put together a workable strategy. I do believe that we need some leadership at the top. I'm excited about what I'm hearing about with regard to some of the changes with regard to leadership reporting to Governor Cox. My district, Senate District 2, houses the lion's share of services for people who are experiencing homelessness, including a number of the shelters, and mental and behavioral health service providers, the 4th Street Clinic. A number of the services are right in my district. And so this is an issue that I talk to my constituents about a great deal. I have 1 minute, so I'll say really what we need is a long-term vision. We have to acknowledge that if we want to get our arms around the issue of homelessness, we have to acknowledge that this is a reality of poverty in our community. We have to take the intergenerational sort of vision and start with the kids that are experiencing poverty today. That's part of the solution. We also have to acknowledge that we need to get people who are living in the rough, people who are on the street, getting them into stable housing is the first most important step to long-term stability. One thing that we've learned in Salt Lake City through our Housing First initiative is once you give somebody access to housing, many things start to fall into place naturally. So if you've been living on the street and then you get an apartment, all of a sudden you have an address. You can reapply for your driver's license. You can apply for federal or state benefits that you may already qualify for to help you get into drug treatment or mental or behavioral health. Oftentimes when you have an apartment or a house, a stable house, family members that you've been estranged from enter the picture once again. And so these are all critical pieces to long-term stability for people. And so housing has to be the thing that we keep right in, dead center of our crosshairs when we're considering what tactics to take in addressing homelessness. So housing is going to be key as we address this going forward.
Okay, thank you, Senator Kitchen. Representative Snow.
Thank you. I agree with so much of what has been said, including and especially the fact that this needs to be led by a statewide organization with more emphasis on some statewide programs that will deal with it. I want to give a shout out to our program in Washington County, Switchpoint, Carol Hollowell. I think some of you know her. What she's done there and what that board and the folks that have worked there is phenomenal. But that's only Washington County. I'm hoping that this governing board recognizes the need for regional representation. While it's true that it is, I think in terms of numbers, it's an issue in urban areas, it's an issue all over the state. And we're certainly affected by that in Washington County, in large part because of the appreciating land values, which just make housing more and more every year, and in some ways every month right now, less affordable. But on the very basic level, I agree with what's been said that in order for individuals to move forward, to become productive, to pursue their interests and their careers and their livelihoods, the basic level of their existence, so to speak, is related to housing, and having housing that they can afford, that they can feel proud of, and so they can be a part of the community. There are lots of pieces of legislation pending this year to deal with this issue. We're going to take a look at them and try to support them. But I think the focus of getting centralized leadership on this issue is critical. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Snow. Senator Iwamoto.
Again, I echo everything they've said. I agree with that. We need that state structure. And I know that there have been talk about how leadership and not knowing who was in control of what has been a problem. And right now is the surge of first-time homelessness uh, has increased so much during this time, especially during the pandemic and other issues. And working in the communities of color too, I've learned some very interesting things on matters on how some of the homeless prefer to be on the street, though. It's when everything's taken away from them and they're put in shelters, I hope we have a place for them to stay because they feel comfortable and safe from the pandemic, a lot of them that we've talked to, in their own, with their own. And when everything is taken away for sanitation or whatever, all the things they've collected, we have to have something that continues on and not just take it away, give them shelter for a couple days and then go on. We have been in contact a lot with Salt Lake City, and I remember Mayor Mendenhall talking about how different parts of we've got to share in this responsibility. So I'm really happy that Mill Creek is going to have a homeless for the winter shelter there. And I think the communities, this has got to be, the Kim Garden recommendations and report are good. It's very hopeful that we'll have this Utah Homeless Council. Private public partnership is key. And it's just a huge issue that I found in my own district and with people, constituents all over. Homelessness is something that we care about in Utah. And I've gone this summer to San Francisco area, Bay Area. Their homeless has exploded. It was exploded before. And I do think that our criminal justice and everything, how we need to deal with that, because we're letting a lot of people out, but we've got to make sure they have the services of mental health and behavioral health. And thank you. My time's up.
Thank you very much, Senator Iwamoto. The next question is about guns, and it's very short. What is your position on the proposal to rescind the required concealed carry permit? And the first person for this question is Senator Kitchen.
Yeah, of course, you asked the millennial Democrat to answer this question first, right? I come from a gun owning family. I grew up pheasant hunting, and it's part of our culture. So I think it's really important as we talk about gun issues that we try to tease out the issues of violence and community safety from culture and domestic protection and things of that nature. I read about this last week for the first time in the news media, and I was surprised to learn that there were so many states that have already rescinded this rule. That being said, it's a little concerning that we're making it. I have concerns, and I'm not entirely certain what my position is, but I do hesitate. So my position right now is no, I don't support it. But again, I try to approach all policy with an open mind. And it's about outcomes ultimately for me. And when we talk about guns, community safety has to be priority number one. And so that was sort of a non-answer, but I'm concerned about this and I'm eager to learn more from the sponsor.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator Kitchen. Representative Snow.
Thank you. I agree with Representative Kitchen that public safety always has to be at the forefront. But as I've thought about this issue, and this isn't the first time this proposal has been brought, so to speak, before us, not voted on yet, but it's certainly been talked about. I also think that we have to give consideration to our Second Amendment rights. And I know not everyone agrees with on this issue, but it is part of our Constitution and it's part of our culture, and it's important to my constituents. And I think we have to recognize that. The last time we considered something similar like this, I remember giving it some thought about personal responsibility. Can we trust citizens to carry under those rights under the Constitution? And as you know, I've been involved in juvenile justice reform, and I thought about that in that context. And apparently we think nothing of, or we don't think too much of putting a 16-and-a-half-year-old behind the wheel of a car or a truck and allowing them to drive the streets. And I think about my experience at that age. It is an issue of personal responsibility. I support it because I believe that citizens of this state have the ability to govern themselves under the Constitution, and that it's a right that should be protected. Thank you, Kathy.
Okay, thank you, Representative Snow. Senator Iwamoto is next.
Thank you. I'm not for taking anyone's rights away, but I have a personal story because I was at my law firm at the 101 California building in 1993. We had a mass shooting where 9 people were killed. And the killer was killed in our, the private stairwell. And he had all kinds of guns and, assault weapons. And he shot 9 people, and he was killed. And I, in our stairwell, and I remember just the victims coming down. And so I do believe, like, I don't know why we need those kind of weapons and for protecting yourselves. Those are weapons of mass destruction, in my view. With the regard to the concealed carry, I haven't read the specifics and I don't have the history of it, but I do believe that people have a right to have their guns for hunting or whatever, but I worry about the education part, and I want to make sure that when people do carry, that they do have education. I've had this conversation with Senator Hinkins, and I know we talked about this, but in his family, he knows how, and he said he's trained all of his family on, and I'm sure he's done a good job educating his children and some people like that. But I think it's important that we make sure that people, before they get purchased and are allowed to, again, that they do have education. And that's all I can say, is that I hope that we're allowing for that education. And without this, which I have heard the education is light and practical experience with a gun, I just hope we carry on with that. So I just have that personal experience on assault weapons and things. And so it's very personal to me, because I know people my secretary at the time, administrative assistant, one of her good friends was killed when the husband dove in front of the gun. So it's very personal, that part to me. But with regard to this, I look forward to learning more about this law and see how it ends up when I vote on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Iwamoto. Senator Milner.
Thank you. So I grew up, my grandparents lived in the mountains of Kentucky, and they hunted for food. And I learned about weapons and hunting very early in my lifetime. And the Second Amendment rights are very important to me. I want to make sure that we have appropriate public safety, but I do believe on the other side, we have to allow people to protect themselves. I am not seeing the specifics of this legislation. I think I'm probably like the other panelists. We've read about it in the newspaper. People think that we all have access to everything in advance, but what happens is there are 104 legislators. They can all, open up bill files and draft legislation, and we have a process then for going through that, and for first considering it in committees, and then it goes to the full body, whether that's the House or the Senate, and then moves over. And so as a part of that process, I think we have a really good vetting process to help us get things right and to bring the balance of viewpoints together. And I think that's what's going to have to happen on this issue. Frankly, I have a concealed weapon permit. I've been through the training. I mean, while I believe education is always important, I don't know that the concealed weapon permit training makes me more responsible to be able to conceal carry. And so depending on what the specifics look like, I'll probably support this legislation.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator Milner. We'll move on to the fourth question, which has to do with water. Colorado River water cannot meet existing legal allotments, and there are no projections that change that. What is your position on the St. George pipeline? And the first person to answer this question is appropriately Representative Snow.
Thank you again, Kathy. This sounds like a setup, but that's okay.
It's all by chance.
I'm happy to respond and respond first. There is certainly some indicators that we're suffering from climate change in the way of a drought. A lot of people are surprised when I tell them that Utah is the second driest state in the country in terms of rainfall. My position is that there is sufficient water in the Colorado to serve our allocation. And when I say our allocation, our state's allocation, it's there by contract, and it has been there. Now, there are states as part of the lower basin that are making claims as well, but I think ours is well established. And the reality is, with the projected growth of Washington County, the Kem Gardner Institute says that it will be the fastest growing county on a per capita basis in the state. To simply say to people that want to come here or who live here or who own property that we're not capable of managing our resources, particularly with respect to water rights that we have and developing those rights to afford the benefit to the citizens who live here and those that want to come here, including my grandchildren, I don't think is the right mentality. Some of you have heard of the mentality that says there's simply not enough to go around and we have to restrict growth. When we talk about homelessness, when you start restricting growth, land values, property values will go through the roof in Washington County. So developing our water resources is one part of dealing with that issue. But I'm a firm believer that there is adequate water resources. Those need to be allocated, and the state needs to look at this instead of a Washington County problem as a state problem and help us resolve that issue. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Representative Snow. Senator Iwamoto.
Whoa, these are difficult questions. I have been involved in water issues for the last 3 years, and I last year finally did the last on water banking, on how we can save agriculture by them being able to contract and use water for, thank you, they brought me lunch, water for different purposes, and they can make money that way instead of just kind of the use it or lose it and all these other things. It's very complicated water, and I've just enjoyed meeting the water community from all around the state. To pass that bill, we must have had, I think we had 70 stakeholders, and we went across the state meeting with everyone to get this legislation passed. We had funding the year before, but on this issue, Governor Huntsman earlier had appointed me to Central Utah Water District, and I'm not an expert in water, but I have always, I had to make that, I say I'm with Central Utah Water, but then I voted against the Lake Powell pipeline. And everything that I've read is that it is over allocated, and that, you know, there's so many issues. The Navajo Nation, I'm so grateful that that finally settled, they actually would have had a lot of our rights, but they did this grand settlement, which I have to thank Ben McAdams for helping with and getting that through, and Senator Romney, because that provides infrastructure for water for the Navajo Nation, and that's really important. I do feel it's over allocated, and the cost to St. George area will be great. The we use that argument a lot, that, and I want to have every tool in the toolbox open for us, for our state, because we are in drought, and we with climate change even more so, we have to worry about that. But I do think there's ways that we can work to mitigate that, and not with looking more deeply into the Lake Pell pipeline and the financing of that pipeline. So I do have my concerns, and I can't go into as much as I'd like to, but thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senator Iwamoto. Senator Milner.
So, it's interesting that we tend to talk about particular projects, but I think we have to see the development of water and in the perspective of, let's think about what's going to be happening in the state in the next 40, 50 years. We are going to double in population. And that means that we're going to have critical infrastructure pieces that support that growth. And while it feels like there are lots of people moving in right now during the pandemic, most of the data that's generated out of the Ken C. Gardner Institute tells us that most of that growth is internal growth. It's our children and our grandchildren that will be actually the reason that we grow so significantly as a state. And that's a good thing. We want our families to stay here. We want them to be able to thrive. We're going to have to make sure we can beat the water and other infrastructure needs to make that happen. And I think that's a combination of strategies. I think we think about that through conservation. It's going to be extremely important for us to think about. Part of this has to happen through conservation. Part of it has to happen through development of water projects. And some of those water projects really are going to be having to invest in the dams that we have, and making sure, they're getting to the end of their life, making sure that we're able, in fact, to keep them safe. Part of it's going to be thinking across the state about how we develop new sources of water. So I don't think this is, I think we have to think much more holistically about this across the state.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator Milner. Senator Kitchen.
Thank you, Kathy. I agree with much of what has been said. And I think about St. George a lot. It came up during Governor Cox's inauguration when he was reminding us all about the impression of Pratt as he made his way through St. George early on. And just speaking about the barren, dry desert land that had very little vegetation, and the inability to support life as he saw it, so to speak. And I just, I spent some time in St. George over the Christmas holiday because my family has a house down there near where the old airport used to be, which is, you're seeing an enormous amount of new development go on in that area of our state. Washington County is exploding. And so it's clear that we've got to figure out a way to care for the people, the residents of our state. Growth is coming, it's happening, it's coming, it's going to continue to, we're going to continue to see massive growth in our state over the coming generation. And I think we have to take this long vision. We have to imagine what our state is going to be like in 30, 40, 60, 100 years from now, with climate change as well complicating the matter, and adding a certain element of, let's say, uncertainty to weather and climate and the way that we manage our precious resources. And so I have great concerns about water. I think what's key is that we have to be talking about quality growth. Obviously, conservation is part of the mix, but we can no longer be the state that builds, golf courses in the middle of the desert and expect it to be tended to in perpetuity, right? Our precious resources are just that precious, and and they're not infinite. And so I have concerns with various projects, especially when we look at them project by project. We have to have that long view and figure out which infrastructure fits into the broader vision of how we manage our resources in the state of Utah. And so, yeah, I have great concerns, and I appreciate the question.
Thank you, Senator Kitchen. I'd like to take a break to remind our audience of the Q&A function. If questions come up to you that you would like us to ask, please go ahead and add them via the Q&A function, and we will, our president of the League of Women Voters is monitoring those as they come in. So please keep that in mind. Our fifth question is along the same lines as the last one, has to do with the environment also. What do you plan to do to slow down? Oh, and the first person to answer this will be Senator Iwamoto. What do you plan to do to slow down climate change? Specifically, do you have plans to introduce any initiatives to lower the air pollution rate along the heavily affected areas in Utah? Senator Iwamoto.
Okay, I'm trying to look at my legislation. I do have one piece of legislation that's continuing one of the commissions for air quality. We do have I think the person that will know a lot because he co-chairs is Lowry Snow of the Air Quality Caucus. And I do not personally have this year one directly on that, but I support, you know, the reduction of the emissions, having goals for that. There's so many things that looking into renewable energy, different things we've done in the legislature, which I don't know if we'll have or not, or with electric cars and charging stations. And I just want to say, so I support all these efforts for clean air. And I'm lucky to have a new intern who she was in charge of bringing that bipartisan climate change bill from students years back. And she's excited to work on those things too. So I don't have personally a specific one, but there's so many things that we can do. And I think the federal government will be leading out on a lot of different things also. And I just wanted to pivot back on the Colorado plan, just because there are 5 states, including Colorado, in addition to Colorado, that do plan to do lawsuits. And that's the one thing, is having a statewide plan. And that was one of my pieces of legislation I had this year, but we don't have our plan together. So I wanted to go back on that to say that we need to work on a statewide plan, because other states have a plan and they're not in our interest. So that's very important. But as far as that, my time's up, but thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Iwamoto. Senator Milner.
Thank you very much. You know, this is, we think about all of this a lot in terms of air quality. And but also, I think we need to think about it in terms of being less energy dependent, and in addition to saving money. So some of you know that I was the president of Weber State University, and there were a number of presidents across the United States that signed a commitment to be carbon neutral in 50 years. And we began that journey at Weber State. And it wasn't just about reducing our carbon footprint. It also was about being able to save dollars on energy resources that we would be able to use to support student learning. And by combining those efforts, we began a large number of initiatives. Well, I'm obviously not the president, but that's been continued by presidents that have followed me. And the university is going to surpass that they are going to meet that deadline before 50 years. And they're going to do it in a way that they're saving money and have been very creative, not just about solar, but geothermal and just thinking about usage and LED light. I mean, it is if you think and plan comprehensively as organizations, you can make a difference. And I believe we can do that same thing as a state around our own state resources, starting to think comprehensively. And a piece of that, I think Senator McKay is going to run a piece of legislation this time around saying, you know, we've learned that air quality improves if we don't have as many vehicles on the highways. And let's encourage and be thoughtful about many of our state employees being able to work at home post-pandemic. And if we can create the scenario to do that, we can make a difference.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Milner. Senator Kitchen.
Thank you. And as you can tell, we all have a lot to say on this topic and all the others. So 2 minutes is barely enough for some of us long-winded politicians. Last year, I had a battery incentive bill. As we transition away from fossil fuels and toward more renewables, we need to make sure that we have the missing gap filled, which is how do we capture and store renewable energy so that we can use it on demand. It's a missing piece as we transition away that is definitely being addressed by the market in some capacity, but it's not moving fast enough. And there's an opportunity for sure for state policy to help move that in particular along. I have a number of bills that might indirectly help various communities invest their own resources into things that may mitigate climate change. But I think it's important, if I'm going to have just a minute and a half to discuss this, I really want to focus on what we can do in the short run. We learned a lot during the pandemic of 2020 and ongoing, of course, but we've learned that working from home is so doable for many of us. And it cuts down on, vehicle miles traveled, which cuts down on, the air pollution, especially along the Wasatch Front, which is so critical. And so more of that, I think, is a big part of our solution going forward. I did have a good conversation with various folks at the Wasatch Front Regional Council and as well as with folks at Envision Utah. As we have this new incoming federal administration and a new Congress, we should anticipate that we will see large dollars spent on the recovery, the national economic recovery. And of course, you hear about infrastructure a fair amount at the federal government. So as I was discussing with Wasatch Front and Envision Utah, I've been putting a lot of pressure on them to put pressure downward on communities, municipalities in Salt Lake County and others to be prepared for shovel-ready infrastructure projects, in particular around transit. Fixed rail is obviously one opportunity. Double tracking our front runner is another one. But as these federal dollars come through, they'll be directed to projects that are what we call shovel ready. And so I think that there's real opportunity for us to see some meaningful investment along the Wasatch Front and even statewide for that matter, to get to air quality and other energy issues. So that's a condensed answer in a moment, but there's a lot to be said there. So I'd be happy to dialogue even further.
Thank you very much, Senator Kitchen. And Representative Snow.
Thank you, Kathy. Senator Iwamoto mentioned my service as one of the co-chairs of the Clean Air Caucus. One of the great opportunities I had to be a charter member with Patrice Arendt in helping to lead that. And that caucus, I think, over the past few years has been really successful in exploring and becoming educated and then running legislation to address this issue. Legislation I ran last session opened the door for Rocky Mountain Power to invest up to $50 million in recharging stations, electric vehicles. It's one of the issues that I've been involved with over the years, because I do believe that electric vehicles as a way of moving us is going to be the future. And I think Utah is stepping out to be ahead of the curve on that. Because of the pandemic and adjustments made in the budget, we weren't able to fund what we intended to our rural electric companies that wanted to also participate in that. So I'm bringing that back this year, working with appropriations, and we think we can find the money to help our rural electric companies also participate in that, and they have a really strong interest. Beyond that, and I know everyone is focusing on vehicle emissions, and we should, but the reality is with the tier 3 fuels now being introduced, fully implemented or close to being fully implemented in our area, and with the new technology of new vehicles coming online, emissions from those from vehicles will be dramatically reduced. And in fact, if you look at the data, we've done a great job in Utah at reducing emissions given our population growth. We still have some distance to go. But the reason I bring that up is it's going to be source emissions that are going to be something as we move into the future that we really need to look at. That is right down to the residential homes, how they heat, what the sources of their heat is, and to some extent commercial applications as well. So I continue to be interested and involved in clean air. I think it's one of the great things for our state. It represents a quality of life that so many are interested in. And it certainly is one of the areas that I remain focused on. One of the other responsibilities I have is chairing. Am I out of time?
You are. Thank you very much, Senator
Okay.
Snow. We appreciate Representative Snow. I'm sorry. We appreciate it. And let's turn to Janine Kuhn-Coker for any questions that have come in on the Q&A
Sure.
function.
Yeah, I'm ready. We have just seen campaigns where the amount of money contributions is outrageous. What, if any, campaign finance regulations would you support?
Okay, shall we ask anyone to jump in on that one that would like to, or we could continue in our same order?
I think anyone who wants to jump in is great.
Okay. Campaign contributions, anyone?
Perhaps I'll jump in really quick and just provide a brief answer. You're all astute political observers, so you understand that, you know, soliciting contributions for a political campaign is part of the system that we have here, not only in Utah, but in the country. And so it has over the years presented, you know, opportunity for various candidates and office holders to use that for more nefarious ways, including soliciting campaigns from people or organizations that may not align with the values of their constituents. We all know the problems. And so it's clear that something, you know, reforms are an important dialogue and something that needs to take place here in Utah and around the country. I don't have any bills this session to address this in particular, but there are things that I've been discussing with constituents about that I think are really important. One of them is publicly funded political campaigns. Now, it is an expense that needs to be contemplated for the taxpayer, but when we're talking about transparency and good government, I think that there's definitely merits to be considered when we talk about publicly funded political campaigns, because it can cut out some of the outside influences that can bring dirty politics into our operating system here. So it's something worth considering, and it's something that I've done a little bit of research on, and I'd be delighted to talk more about this, especially if there's a group of people who are organizing around reforms. Obviously, as a senator or as a legislator, it's a lot of times it's easier to push policy when you have constituent groups that are already organizing. So I do think about publicly funded campaign finance a lot.
Okay, thank you, Senator Kitchen. Would anyone else like to jump in on that?
I
Senator
will.
Iwamoto.
Yeah, I mean, I support this legislation. I think it's really hard, like when we ran a campaign and when I ran for county council, I had no idea what I was getting into. And I had to raise over 100,000 and each Senate race over 100,000, but most primarily come from individuals who give $50 to $100. And I really appreciate that. But it's really hard to get your word out, because to do a mailer, it's like 10,000, 11,000, depending on who you're sending it to. So I see that and how you can be handicapped without the ability to get your message out. But I always tell people, look at the conflict of interest and the financial disclosure reports of your of legislators, because you can see where they get funded from and what are big donors and things. Hopefully, and I think with our legislature, people vote the way they believe, and that is no matter where they get their money. But I know that big money can come into play on a lot of different issues, and I see that happening. But um, I'm I love working in this legislature with my Republican and Democratic colleagues, and I think that we work hard, and we are, even if they take some money, people take some. I just have a policy for myself on certain areas where I feel there's pressure to be had by certain places and I just don't take it. And I've rejected it kindly, but that's just me. But I do believe people vote with what they believe, and sometimes they will take money because they believe the same way. So I think we have a lot of integrity at our legislature, and hopefully, but I have no opposition to have some of those laws passed too. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Iwamoto. Would anyone else like to respond? Senator Milner.
Yes. So I know this is an issue, and we particularly focus on perhaps at the federal level, and this is the state level. I think the key to this is transparency, and I actually believe Utah does a good job of that. The fact that we have to post every campaign donation, we have to do it within 3 days of depositing that campaign donation. So it is immediately transparent to the public and to anyone who goes to the website. I think is extremely important part of this. Personally, I have people that have supported me in my campaigns from a wide variety of backgrounds and viewpoints and occupational areas, etc. But I have never felt compelled to vote based on a campaign donation. For me, I'm representing my district. I work to listen to my constituents and what their feedback is. Now, in my district, I have a very, very politically diverse district with people from all along the political spectrum. But I try to listen to all of those and then make what I consider to be the best decision for the state of Utah. And that's what I think our responsibility is. It's to disclose it, to be public about it, to have everybody know. And then at the end of the day, that we vote based on the best interests of all the citizens of the state of Utah, knowing that not everybody will agree with the decision, but that what we think collectively, having studied the issue, listened to our constituents, what we think is best.
Thank you very much, Senator Milner. Representative Snow, do you have anything to add?
I adopt Senator Milner's statement almost word for word. That was great. And the other comments were as well. I would add one other thing too. I'd remind everyone that that our reporting is a public record. It is transparent, and any citizen can go online and look at who we receive our donations from. The only other thing I would add to what Anne has said is, in my years of service, I've recognized that it does take money in order to run campaigns. That's just the reality. But in my years of service thus far, I've never had one instance that I can recall where anyone that has made a donation to me of any amount has ever said to me, I'm donating this to you because I want you to take this position, or I expect you to take this position, or I expect you to vote this way. It would be improper, of course, but that has not even been alluded to, even in a veiled way. So I think transparency, and I also think the quality of the people that we elect to hold these positions is really important. Thanks, Kathy, for giving me a few minutes.
Thank you all. I think we need to move on to your final thoughts. My clock says 11:23. We're planning a minute apiece for each of you for your final thoughts on the legislature, what's ahead for you. And let's go back to our original order and begin with Representative Snow.
Thank you again, Kathy. In just wrapping things up, I'd just like to say this for myself and my colleagues. We spend a tremendous amount of time trying to do our job well. I can't think of anyone that I serve with that isn't sincere and trying their best to perform their duties as a legislator. And that goes for everyone on this panel, but everyone that I serve with up there. It's such a great honor. It's not easy, it's challenging. I've told some of my lawyer colleagues that it's some of the hardest work that I've done, but it's incredibly satisfying. I appreciate very much the support of those who support what I'm trying to accomplish, who have confidence in me, because if I didn't have that, it wouldn't be worth the service that I render. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to participate in this panel. Greatly appreciate having communication directly with the citizens of this state on important issues. So that's all I'll say for now. Thank you, Kathy.
And thank you for your time, Representative Snow. Senator Iwamoto.
Yes, I just want to thank everyone for having us today. And I want to say the same thing. I have loved working in the legislature. It's been such an honor for me. Everybody does their best. We work together. You look at a lot of divisiveness, but most of the time, 99% of the time, we work together on vote together. But we may have differences, but we do try to get the best result, and we don't take it personally against any of our colleagues because we work well together, and I respect them all. Also, constituents have been and always will be the most important thing to me, and it's just grown because the constituents are the entire state. We vote on things that impact everyone, and so to me, that's the most important thing of my job, is that they may not all agree, but I do the best I can to honor my constituents and make sure that they are always at the forefront. I want to say that to all of you to keep involved, go to le.utah.gov to track committees, track bills. You can make comment, public comment is allowed, but on the floor, and you know, we're not required to wear masks, which is kind of hard for me, but we can do it virtually. So I just encourage people to, you can come personally. They're spacing people out, requiring masks for the public. Please be involved. And also, if you're 70 or older this week, sign up for your shot, if that's what you would like to do.
Thank you very much, Senator Iwamoto.
Thank you.
Senator Milner.
So I also want to say thank you for organizing this event, the opportunity to be able to engage in conversation with my colleagues who I greatly respect. One of the things you learn quickly in the legislature is while you have differences sometimes in viewpoints on issues, you respect the colleagues that you work with and their point of view, and we can engage in civil dialogue in ways that ultimately allow us to make good decisions for the state of Utah and serve the citizens of the state to the best of our ability. I think this is going to be a legislative session that has issues that are very important. It's all the pandemic related issues are still going to be with us. But in addition to that, there's education, there's the economy, there's workforce development. I mean, things that our citizens are struggling with that we need to be kind of focused on making sure we're stabilizing families and the state. And thank you for the opportunity to serve all of you in this role.
Thank you very much, Senator Milner. Senator Kitchen.
Thank you so much. It's been a delight, as always, to engage with the League of Women Voters. I appreciate the questions, all really pointed and important questions, well thought out. I encourage all of you, whether I represent you or not, stay engaged with me this session and going forward. I really want to know what you think. I want to be able to, articulate opposition or support for policy based, of course, on my constituents first and foremost, but for the greater well-being of the state of Utah and the residents of this beautiful state. So as Senator Iwamoto mentioned, yes, we represent our constituents, but the decisions we make impact all of us. And I really want to be mindful of decisions that are made today, how they will impact our communities for generations to come. So this is a really important job. It's a service role that I am so honored to be able to participate in. And I just thank you so much for engaging. I in the little chat box here, I dropped my email as well as my handle for all social media platforms. My intention is to be a good communicator with my constituents and all of you this session. So please engage with me any way that you can. And I look forward to hearing from more of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our panel members. I have two more things I want to say. One is a quick announcement. The third of a series of panels on police reform in Salt Lake will be held virtually this coming Monday at 7 p.m. You can register by going to the League of Women Voters of Salt Lake page on Facebook or the League of Women Voters of Salt Lake's weekly briefing that will arrive in members' inboxes. The second thing I want to say is that as a regular observer of the legislators' committee meetings, maybe the thing that impresses me most of all are how hard our legislators work. I can't believe the hours that are put in the public meetings, in preparation. I think we're very fortunate to have the legislature that we do. So thank you all for being here. And to our audience, thank you too. And I guess we're ready to sign off.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.